Good evening, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the co host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and this is the PGA Championship with Brady Kannon, Wednesday, May 17th, 2023. As we were talking backstage, uh, an incredible week of sports, and the second major in the PGA today starts tomorrow. As Brady was telling me, I mean, there's not a stronger field in any tournament this year. Justin Thomas, the defending champ, we're at Quail Hollow. Just looking at some of the prices, two clear favorites, Mr. Scheffler and Mr. Rahm, right around plus 700, 750, depends upon where you're shopping. But to look at some of the prices and some of these names, and you're saying to yourself, I can get what at what? And it's like a kid in a candy store. But Brady, fresh off a 16-1 pre-flop, Jason Day last week, nothing better than a pre-flop. In today's market, they allow you to go in after Thursday, after Friday, after Sunday. But when you get the pre-flop, there's nothing more special. So without further ado, let's bring him in, the one and only Mr. Brady Kannon.
Mr. Dawson, how are you? Thank you for that kind introduction there. You're right about the outrights. You know, that I always say that's where all the glory is, right? And you could have a week where you hit every single guy for top 20. You went 5 or 6-0 on your head-to-head matchups. But when you get that outright, that's where the headlines are made. And, you know, I've also said on your show before, too, that is the least amount of risk for me is the outright market. You know, it's a bit of a needle in the haystack for sure. I will up the ante for the top 20, markets and that type of thing. And then I will, risk the most amount on the head-to-head matchups. That's your best chance to actually turn a profit are the head-to-heads. But you're right. That's where all the fame is and the fun stuff. And like I say, the glory when you hit the outrights. And I'll tell you what, it sure was fun.
It was amazing. I was telling you the story. Go to bed Saturday night, take a look at the odds, wake up Sunday morning before everyone tees off. And I saw even Jason Day, who was 2 shots back. Scheffler was in front of him and a couple other names. Scheffler was plus 350. Day was plus 550. And that's 2 shots back with the Scheffler and a couple of the golfers. And I'm like, Brady's going to get this one. Brady's going to take this one in. And sure enough, congrats.
Good for you. Yeah. Glad you jumped on the coattails there at the, before Sunday's final round. And, fortunate there too, that he was a couple back. So that price was pretty nice at better than 5-1.
Yes, absolutely. And I had a little something on the 16-1 pre-flop.
Good for you.
Yeah. After the show, I go right to the board over here, and we, all my notes when my head's down then goes to DraftKings and the other sports books around. So I take the plays and I move right to the right, and then we just hit play, and then we hit this, and this. So your card is my card.
Fun week for us indeed. And, I talk about hitting the head-to-heads in the top 20s. It was a pretty good week in that regard as well. I hit 3 top 20 finishers, and my longer bombs, Brandon Wu, Nate Lashley, and Eric Cole, they missed the top 20 by 1 shot. So that would have been real nice had they just done better by 1 shot. And then our head-to-head matchups went 3-1-1. So that worked out pretty nicely as well. Nice to have a week. And, you and I have discussed it on the program here as well. About the 3 weeks prior, kind of coming off of the Masters, I was in a little bit of a drought, really doing poorly on the head-to-head matchups. So nice to turn it around, and hopefully the trend continues this week at Oak Hill in Rochester, New York.
So before we pass the baton over to you, let's set everyone up here. This is the second major. As you said, the strongest field of the year coming into New York, and they were kind of kidding. I saw this morning, they got the Stark hats on, and they got bundled up, they think it's still winter here, and give us the last couple of weeks, whether it's Mexico coming back to the States, now New York. Give us the feel of almost like the crescendo. As in other words, you're tuning yourself up, and then boom, here we are for the second major.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you and I've talked about this on the program as well. We've had kind of a little warm up course here for the last 3 weeks on the PGA Tour. All of these golf courses, I won't say they're very similar, but they certainly are in size. And there are some statistics that you have to look at for Oak Hill that we've been looking at for the past 3 weeks at Mexico, Vedanta Vallarta, Quail Hollow Golf Club for the Wells Fargo, and then also TPC Craig Ranch for the Byron Nelson last week. They're all in that 74 to 7,500 yard range, same as Oak Hill. They were all par 71. Oak Hill is a par 70. Quail Hollow, a little bit narrower on the fairways. Oak Hill, even more narrow on the fairways. The Vedanta Vallarta, wider in the fairways, as is TBC Craig Ranch. But again, these courses all favored the longer hitters. And that's what the case is again here at Oak Hill in New York. And there's also that window of where a lot of the approach shots are going to come from. And for the past 3 weeks, and again this week, 175 yards to about 225 yards. Long iron play. It's been now what'll be 4 weeks in a row that's been a key metric to look at to who's likely to have success on these golf courses of that length. So, like I say, it's been a nice little prelude to kind of warm us up for what we're in for. Now, it becomes, incredibly more difficult, incredibly more demanding. But, the players have had a little bit of an introduction to those long iron shots, needing to be good off the tee. Now we bring a golf course that's been totally redesigned. And, Andrew Green was brought in there in 2019 to kind of restore this and revitalize the old Donald Ross touch that Ross had intended for this place back when he started construction in 1924. And we do have some Donald Ross courses on tour: East Lake, where they play the Tour Championship; Detroit Golf Club, where they play the Rocket Mortgage; and Sedgefield Country Club, where they play the Wyndham Championship. Also, Aronimink was in 2018 in Pennsylvania, where they played the BMW Championship. That's another Ross design. And, some of his characteristics are shaved runoff areas around the greens, some undulation, some bumps in the greens. Pinehurst #2, site of the 2014 U.S. Open, another Ross design. So, Andrew Green was kind of given the task of trying to bring some of that back to life and then also bring the course up to modern day standards. The last time we saw it was 2013 when Jason Duffner won here. And it's a much different golf course now. Duffner won it with tree-lined fairways, and it was more like a U.S. Open test. Just hit it straight, get your two-putt, make your par, and move on. Well, they have removed over 600 trees from this golf course for a lot of reasons: to get more sunlight into the ground, and kind of thin the place out a little bit, allow the airflow. It's a healthier practice that a lot of golf courses are moving to these days. So what it's done is it's given these guys more opportunities off the tee. They will have second shot alleyways where they won't necessarily have to punch out from the woods. The fairways are still very narrow. They're just going to find themselves with a shot from the rough. And the rough is going to be dense and thick. It's not going to be, I don't expect it'll be U.S. Open rough, but I'm thinking 3 to 3.5 to 4 inches thick. And, that's the other thing, Jeff, is, we're here in the month of May in New York too. It's going to be chilly in the morning. You're going to have some dew on the ground. That rough will be wet. This is not played in August anymore when Duffner won it in 2013. So I think you're going to have a much softer golf course. It'll play even longer because of that reason. And, because it is the growing season, that grass, these guys will cut the rough to whatever number it is that the PGA wants it on Thursday, and then they won't touch it again. It could grow an inch before we get to Sunday, and just something, an interesting little nuances as well there. But, I'm rambling now, Jeff, but we've got, Mexico and Texas and North Carolina, and here we are all leading up to this with some similarities that we've had in the past few weeks. But now, everything is elevated. And you and I said this backstage as well. This is an elevated event on steroids now.
I was walking in watching the PGA this morning, and actually, I think actually, it was this morning. They were showing Jordan with the wrist injury. He had some tape here. He had the black tape here. As of this morning, he was going to try to give it a go. Have you gotten an update? Is he going to give it a go?
Well, I guess he played the practice round, and I haven't heard the latest update, but I believe he was expected to complete all 18 holes of his practice round, which is a lot to say because the other day he only played like one hole. I think that was yesterday. Played one hole, and I thought, well, that means he's done, right? I mean, you play one hole, and he says, no, I'm done. If you're good, you think you would have continued, but he went out there today, and there has not been an announcement yet, so that's good. I just hope like heck that he doesn't hurt himself because a wrist injury, that was kind of my thinking when he only played one hole yesterday. And I'm thinking, this isn't like a bum knee or, he's pulled a groin or something like that. This is a wrist. I mean, how much is there any more important body part than your wrist for a golfer? Certainly one of the very most anyway. And if he happens to create some extensive damage there, that could be career threatening. So, thoughts and prayers that this goes okay for Jordan if he is going to indeed go on with it.
Yeah, and you were just talking about the rough before too, and you think about, he's not he doesn't have the greatest accuracy off the tee, so I could see a lot of to the right, a lot of to the left, a lot of rough play, and again, you get into a 8th, 9th, 12th, 13th hole, you get a little tired, of course, and then I hope for his sake that he makes the right decision here.
Well, if he played the entire practice round today, that would lead me to believe that he is okay. And like you and I both say, I hope he is. I hope we get to see him play. I hope he does well, and I hope he's healthy.
I'm looking at the board here, and we talked about this backstage. And for the people that are just tuning in to say, hey, it's a major, I want to listen to what the expert has to say. And then they go to say DraftKings. And you can't take a field of 125, 130 golfers and take one ticket and expect to win. What you do and what we do is, we take a look at the board and, you got yourself 5, 6, 7 players, maybe a couple of the mid favorites to a couple of the, 40, 50s, and then you take a couple bombers. You see 2 7-to-1s or 750s to 1 with Scheffler, with Rahm, and then you just go a little further down and you got Rory at 1,600. Cantlay at 1,600, Xander at 1,800, Tony Finau 2,200, Brooks at 22, Day and Fitzpatrick 28, 3,000. So the initial mindset is, as I said to you backstage, isn't this made for Scheffler? And as you said to me, well, yeah, same as Rahm, same as a few others. So you rather get 2 or 3 swings for the price of one is where I was going.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, the Masters, and you and I both talked about this as well. We were both on Rory McIlroy. The Masters is probably the one major championship. And I don't land on a single digit guy pre-tournament very often at all, let alone a major. The Masters is probably the one tournament where I will play a single digit favorite the most. Because you have such a smaller field. And I was on Rory McIlroy. I bet him back in September at 12-1. You mentioned you had him at 10-1. And I'm okay with that at Augusta. First of all, it's a very chalky tournament. Typically, the favorites win there. And you also have a condensed field. There was, I believe, 90 some players in the field this year. But then you have the debutantes, you have the former champions, Fred Couples and what have you. So this field becomes very condensed quickly at the Masters. And I think at the end of the day, there's really only about maybe 40 guys, but probably closer to 30 guys that can win that week. And so that makes a difference when you're taking a guy at 10-1 against 30 other players versus, in this market here for the PGA Championship, there truly might be about 80 guys that could win. I mean, there's 156 in the field, 20 of which are club professionals, We can probably throw those gentlemen out, all due respect. You're left with 136. You've got some young guys, some relative unknowns and what have you. So again, maybe we're down to somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 to 100 guys that could win this. Do you really want to have all your eggs in the basket of 7-1? Tough to, I believe, justify that math.
Well, I'm going to pass the baton to you. This is your cup of tea. This is your specialty. The fairway is yours, my friend.
All right. So we will start with the outright market here. And I started with Xander Schauffele, and I got him. I think it was over the weekend or maybe first thing this week. But I got a nice price on him at 23, and I've seen him come crashing down pretty hard. I think I've seen as low as maybe 14 on Xander Schauffele, and it makes a heck of a lot of sense. You know, all he does is contend in majors. He's got a number of top tens in majors, and you look at what he's done on the correlated courses, nothing at Sedgefield or the Detroit Golf Club, but at Eastlake, he's got a first, a seventh, a couple of second place finishes, a fifth, and a fourth. Now, the three Donald Ross designs that we see on tour, I don't think they're a whole lot similar to Oak Hill, but there is that common denominator of the designer, and I believe there will be some similarities, enough where you kind of have to consider those. Now, you go to other courses that are not Ross designs that I believe are even more similar, like Winged Foot, where Bryson DeChambeau won the 2020 U.S. Open. Xander Schauffele, another top 10 finish there. 2019 at Bethpage Black, where Brooks won the PGA. Big, long golf course. Xander Schauffele, 16th place finish there. Torrey Pines, another big, long golf course. 2021 U.S. Open. Xander Schauffele, 7th. Yeah, I mean, so not only does he contend in majors, he contends on the courses that kind of match up here with Oak Hill. And he's also coming in good form. He just came off of a second place finish. Oh, by the way, at another major championship venue, Quail Hollow, for the Wells Fargo a few weeks ago. So Xander Schauffele, my first play. Tony Finau, I think we've talked about this one. When he went on to win the Mexico Open at Vedanta, I grabbed him at the midway point for the PGA because I felt he was going to win in Mexico, and I knew if he did, his price would be chopped. So I grabbed him at 33-1. He's down as low as 20, 25 at this point. He actually came out tops. When I run all my numbers and crunch all the stats, Tony Finau came out as my number one. And it's very similar to Schauffele. He's contended in a number of majors. He's good on all the big boy golf courses, all the correlated courses that we're talking about. He has very high finishes, and he does everything well, like Xander, like a lot of the guys, John Rahm, Scotty. There's probably 20 guys at the top of this odds board that do everything well, and any one of them could win. I love the form that Tony's in. Of course, he comes off of the win at Mexico, his fourth win, by the way, I believe in the last 18 months or so. So, this guy's been on a good run here for a little while. He hits a high, long ball off the tee. He's very good from that window of yardage we were talking about, from a 175 to 225. His short game has improved immensely over the last few years. And he's also, by the way, number one on tour in strokes gained approach. So Tony Finau was another choice for me there at 33-1. I also landed on Brooks Koepka at 23-1. His number still right about in that neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And I've kind of heard two different opinions on Brooks. Some people think he's kind of a fade this week. Maybe people are reacting to what we saw him do in the Masters. And other people are backing him, not only because of what he did in the Masters, but because this golf course is perfect for him, and also what he's done the last few weeks on the LIV Tour. He's got a third place and a fifth place finish in those tournaments. He finished like 8th for ball striking. I think he was 5th and 7th for total driving. Total driving, a combination of length and accuracy, which I think is a really big statistic that you will need here at Oak Hill. I mentioned the win at Bethpage Black in 2019 at the PGA there. I think that's maybe the most correlated course of all, the most similarities to what we're going to see at Oak Hill this week. And all Brooks did is win the thing. So I think Koepka makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't really want him at less than, say, 22. I think it probably gets pretty expensive at that point. But I would say 22 to 25 is a pretty good number on Koepka. Then I went with Colin Morikawa, and I did not get a good number here. This is another guy that I bet when I bet Tony Finau prior to his win at Mexico. I was starting to research the golf course at that point and what skill sets were going to make sense. And I thought Morikawa did make sense. Now, since then, he's missed the cut at Quail Hollow, and we've seen his price drift. I got him at 25. He's all the way, I think I saw 38 earlier today, which I probably wouldn't. I mean, if this guy got to 40, you probably have to grab some of that too. Yes, his form has not been perfect, but it was only a month ago that he finished 10th at Augusta. And a lot of people will say Morikawa is not a bomber, and he's not, but he still gets it out there close to 300 yards, 297 on average on tour as far as driving distance, but he's also number 3 on tour in driving accuracy. And we know this guy's arguably the best iron player in the world. I mentioned from 175 to 225. He ranks especially high in iron shots, hole proximity from that window. So if he's finding the fairway all week long and you put that iron in his hand from those distances, I got to believe he's going to make some noise. We'll see what the short game does. But again, you give him those approach shots all week from the short grass, and I think Morikawa will be just fine. Unfortunately, I did not get the best number on him. Victor Hovland, I got at 30-1. That's no longer really the best number either. I think you can probably find 35, maybe even a little bit higher. And it's kind of the same thinking here. He's been a little bit off the boil as well, but I couldn't pass on. This is another guy that I bet a month ago, and not necessarily the week of, but I just couldn't pass up how good a ball striker and how good a driver of the golf ball he is. He's 4th on tour in total driving. You look at the correlated courses, he's got a runner-up finish at Torrey Pines. He's 21st in strokes gained approach over the last 36 rounds, 12th in ball striking, and 11th in this field for the par 4s ranging from 450 to 500 yards, which about 12 of the par 4s fall into that category on this golf course. So Victor made a ton of sense for me as well. I'll forego the current form just the last couple of weeks because, again, like Morikawa finishing 10th at the Masters, well, Victor Hovland finished 7th. So I certainly don't think these guys have all of a sudden fallen off the radar with their quote unquote current farm. And then I get into some longer bombs here. I took Ricky Fowler at 100-1. This was a guy that I also played a month ago. I couldn't believe the way his stats jumped off the page at me. This guy is quietly having an excellent year, maybe one of the best years we've seen out of Ricky Fowler in the last 6-8 years or so. He is 31st on tour in total driving. Over the last 36 rounds, 17th for strokes gained ball striking, 13th in bogey avoidance, 22nd in scrambling, 39th in hole proximity from 175 to 200, and 39th in strokes gained putting on bent grass. Also, another correlated course I used was Muirfield Village, Jack's Tournament, home of the Memorial. He's finished runner-up there twice, and he was also 8th at Aronimink. I mentioned that being a correlated course a little earlier. And then another long bomb, a triple-digit play on Russell Henley at 125-1. And this is a little bit of a sleeper pick here. I don't think a lot of people are gravitating to Russell Henley because he's not a bomber. He only averages about 287 off the tee on tour, but he is number 1 in driving accuracy. And if you look at what he's done at some of the big boy golf courses, again, this was just a month ago at Augusta National, a course that caters to the longer hitters, right? He just finished 4th there. And you look at Torrey Pines, home of the U.S. Open in 2021, another big, long golf course. He finished 13th there and was also the first round leader back in 2021. So if Russell Henley, like I say with Morikawa is certainly the stronger iron player, but if Henley's playing from the fairway all week long, I think he's got a shot as well, and he's proven it recently. He's got 3 top 20 finishes in his last 4 starts, including a top 5, as I mentioned, at the Masters. And then finally, the last guy I landed on, another triple-digit bomb, Gary Woodland. And speaking of bomber, Gary Woodland at 150-1, and I've seen his price drop as well. Woodland has been in really good form as of late. He finished 14th at Quail Hollow and actually led the field that week in strokes gained tee to green. The next week, he went to Mexico and was third in the field in strokes gained tee to green. Everything that involves ball striking, Gary Woodland has been spot on, and I expect he will be again here this week. He's a tremendous driver of the golf ball. He hits it far. He hits it straight. His iron play from that 175 to 225 is fantastic. The only thing that's been holding him back is the short game. In this field, the last 36 rounds, 131st for scrambling and 109th for strokes gained putting on bent grass. Now, as you know, Jeff, putting, not necessarily scrambling, but putting for sure, is the most volatile of all the skill sets in golf. It can be good one day, it can be bad the next, it can be good one week and bad the next. You get what I'm saying here. If Gary Woodland can be average or just really good for a couple of days with the putter at this golf tournament, he could win the whole darn thing.
I agree. And some of the prices there, we've been talking the last few weeks about Team Puma and Ricky. Ricky has had and I'm glad, here's a guy that, a half dozen years ago was the talk of a lot of tournaments, such an enjoyable guy, a good guy on tour, someone that the younger generation would kind of sort of gravitate to him, always wearing the I love the orange Puma look, with the hat and the shirt. And then you're coming up with Henley and Woodland. I love where your eyes are. And I have one question. You were talking about iron play, and Morikawa, Hovland are my two binkies for sure. I have one that my numbers always seem to lean towards. Good iron player, but how does he match up in this course? And that's Joaquin Niemann.
Yeah, I've seen some sharp people that like Joaquin Niemann this week, and I definitely, don't disagree with them. I think it's harder to handicap the live players. There's not as much data available, and you don't have the eye test, because at least I don't watch them, and not many people do, kind of out of sight, out of mind. And, you absolutely have to be aware of the guys on that tour. I think there's probably maybe 5 guys this week that definitely could make some noise. I would say Koepka, DJ, possibly Cameron Smith, and Joaquin Niemann is one of those guys. Taylor Gooch, I know some people think he's got a real good shot this week, but I've seen some very sharp opinions on Joaquin Niemann, and this guy's always been a great ball striker. I mean, he won at Riviera, right? The LA Open, the Genesis Invitational. It doesn't get much better than that. That's about as close as it gets to a major championship. The short game, not necessarily the scrambling, but the putter has eluded him on occasion. He's very good off the tees, plenty long. He is definitely, I don't know if I'd call him bomber, but he's awful close. So yeah, he's got all the tools. You just wonder, about the Live Tour. Are we getting value on the board because, people don't necessarily like to bet on these guys? Or is it for real that they're a little bit out of practice? They don't play as much golf as the rest of the guys. They don't play against a field like this. So, I'm a little bit torn on how you approach it. Now, of course, I'm on Koepka because I've seen with my own eyes that this guy, we've heard the storyline for so many years that all he cares about is majors. Apparently that's dead solid true with what we saw at the Masters. And he's also, like I said, come off some very good finishes last week, just finished 65-65 on Friday, Saturday on the Live Tour. So he's in fine form, and Niemann is as well. So no, I'm not going to argue with Joaquin Niemann as one of your plays at all.
It's funny because back to the Masters, I was hot, heavy, and horny for DJ and had no swing on Brooks. And there's, a lot of the people saying we're just staying away from the live guys. And I just had to eat crow from Thursday, Friday, waiting for one of those wheels to fall. So now again, I got no, I'm staying away. I'm staying no DJ. The Brooks really makes sense to me here as Brooks. But, I leave DJ, at the driving range, and I leave the rest of the live golfers at the driving range. And then, which one's going to pop up this week is the one that you're always cringing.
Well, it's interesting. There's a similarity here between Koepka and DJ. By the way, Dustin Johnson finished, I believe, 8th at this tournament in 2013. And this is Dustin Johnson, certainly a bomber. And he did that on a tree-lined US Open type golf course. So he's certainly had some success here in the past. And now Johnson comes into this tournament off of a win. What did Koepka do at the Masters? He came in off of a win. So, maybe they're going to swap places this time. And I do know some sharp people that like DJ this week as well. He didn't make my card. I don't know. I just don't get the same feeling about mental focus on the majors that we get out of Brooks Koepka that we do now with a live player, Dustin Johnson. Before live, absolutely. I was on DJ for the Masters. I was on him for the PGA Championship at Harding Park. He didn't win that time, but my point is I love DJ. It's actually one of my favorite players. He's probably the only guy I wish had not gone to the Live Series, but I'll enjoy watching him this week. Obviously the form's got to be pretty decent off of the win, but I just don't know. I don't know if he is all in 100% DJ the way he was pre-live.
Shout out to George Jung, who says, I enjoys Brady's insights on his head-to-head matchups. George, they're coming real soon. Michael Dombrowski, yes, Celtics tonight. 4 wins away from the potential going back to the finals. All right, we got the outrights. Now let's go to the first round leaders.
Oh, okay. First round leader. I started with Russell Henley. He's on my outright card, and I've got him for first round leader as well at 80-1. I talked about the stats, driving accuracy is number 1 on tour, great short game, scrambles very well. But also, if you look at what this guy has done as far as being a first round leader in the past, I mentioned he took that position at 2021's U.S. Open at Torrey Pines. Again, this is another big, long golf course. I think certainly a correlated course to Oak Hill, what we have here this week. Russell Henley was your first round leader there at that U.S. Open that ended up being won by Jon Rahm. And then also back in 2018, in the Northeast at a U.S. Open at Shinnecock. He was your first round leader there as well. So I thought if he's worth a shot for an outright, why not get out to a fast start? If you think a guy's going to do well enough to bet him outright, then the first round leader is always a consideration as well. And Russell Henley has a history of doing so in major championships. Second of all, I went with Taylor Moore at 90-1. And you remember on this program, Jeff, we hit Taylor Moore for a future at the Valspar at 60-1 when he won earlier this year. Well, since the Players Championship, he has 4 rounds where he has gained 4 or more strokes on the field. That's a pretty good clip. He is also 48th on tour in first round scoring average. And if you look at what he did in his win at the Valspar, he was like 3rd in strokes gained tee to green in the field that week. He was like 1st in scrambling. I think he was 10th in putting. His driving distance was solid. I think he was 1 or 2 or, top 5 in greens in regulation. He did everything well. And that's what you need to do to win a golf tournament. And I think the young man does possess the skills to do everything well. Maybe not for 4 days. I don't know if he's ready to win a major. I do know some people that like his chances this week as far as a long bomb. But I went, I trimmed it down a little and I said, maybe he'll have a really good day on Thursday. And again, we've talked about this before too. First round leader is really the worst market you can bet into. Don't get too serious, folks. The hold percentage is astronomical. If you thought picking an outright winner was a needle in a haystack, this is probably almost double that. And so tread lightly. And then finally, Hayden Buckley, who's another big hitter. Not only a big hitter, but 7th on tour in total driving, a combination of length and accuracy. Not only is he long, but he hits it very straight as well. He's kind of like Gary Woodland a little bit and maybe a little bit like Victor Hovland as well, where he absolutely bombs it, tremendous ball striker, but sometimes the putter lets him down. So let's see if the putter can get hot for 18 holes on Thursday. Got him at 125-1 to be your first round leader. Another thing to consider here in this market, if you're going to play it, Jeff, we talked about the chilly temperatures. Thursday is going to be the day to score. The rest of the days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the weather gets kind of squirrely. You're going to have wind anywhere from 10 to 20 miles an hour, a chance of rain on Saturday, I believe about a 60% chance, and cloudy the entire time. So Thursday is supposed to be full of sunshine, a high of about 65 and no wind. So that's going to be the day to go low. And if you look at who's teeing off in the morning on that day, your overnight lows and the time or the temperature at the time of day those guys are teeing off in the morning, it's going to be in the 40s. It's going to be like 45 to 48 degrees. So Taylor Moore's teeing off in the morning wave, but otherwise I stayed away from the morning wave. I'd like to see it a little bit warmer in the afternoon where you can get that full flight out of the golf ball and these guys will be a little bit more comfortable.
Jim Christie. Yes, I was looking at last week's notes. I typed Quail Hollow in the description. I was looking at last week's notes as I was multitasking. So, Mr. Christie, I apologize to you, sir, as I typed Quail Hollow. So, apologies.
Hey, it's a PGA Championship venue too.
It is, exactly. I think I was transitioning. I was typing in the Jason Day, the pre-flop. And of course, that goes right into Quail Hollow.
Yes.
Versus
And Justin
Oak Hill.
Thomas. You were talking about JT too.
Yes.
Your winner in 2017 at the PGA.
Yes. Apologies.
You're forgiven, my friend.
Thank you. Three first round leaders. And last, but of course not least, head-to-heads.
Yeah, head-to-head matchups. I took your man, Jason Day, over Dustin Johnson. I think this will be a pretty decent matchup. And, Day has kind of gotten a little bit funny here as of late where he's not going to play a practice round. There hasn't been much attention in the market as far as the outright market on Jason Day at all. I guess a little bit exhausted from what it took mentally and physically to get that home for you and I at the Byron Nelson. I find that interesting, but he's trying to recharge his batteries by not playing any practice rounds. We'll see if that's a good strategy or not. But I thought the price was pretty darn good at -115 over Dustin Johnson. Both of these guys coming into this tournament off of wins. Colin Morikawa at -140 over Max Homa. We've already made the case for Colin Morikawa. Ricky Fowler at -120 over Tom Kim. Tom Kim's a very short hitter of the golf ball. I just don't know if he's a real good match for this golf course. Now, he did win on a Donald Ross design at the Wyndham Championship, but I also mentioned that's really a far cry from what we have here. You'll get some nuances and some style similarities, but certainly not the same, ball of wax that we have here at Oak Hill. Russell Henley on my guy again there at -125 over Mito Pereira. You wonder what's in the head of Mito Pereira coming off that loss last year at the PGA Championship when he looked to have it in the palm of his hand, teeing off on the 18th hole. And that's not the entire reason for the handicap here, but it is interesting to think about what he'll be going through on that first tee when he tees it up on Thursday. And then Taylor Moore, I go back to Taylor Moore at -130 over Tom Hoagie. I don't know if this golf course is a great fit for Hoagie either.
It's funny, you were just describing the 18th tee. I was driving back from Yukon. I was on the Mass Pike, and we had JT, and I had Sirius radio on, so I'm listening to the, imagine that driving.
That must have been. How'd you not crash your car?
Someone called me as Mito was teeing off, and he was just like, "Man, Jeff, so close," because we had JT pre-flop, and I'm like, "Yeah, I know." And he's like, "Oh my God, you're not gonna believe this." I'm like, so
that is great.
Those were memories. Great. Amazing card. Obviously, I have a lot of work to do here. We can't thank you enough here. So many people watching and listening. Mr. Christie, Mr. Jung, Mr. Dombrowski, Marty, Connor, everyone here. The show's not over. Please go follow Brady at Las Vegas Golfer. You can go follow him at golf_com, GolfBet, PGA Tour. He'll be on the Sports Grid tonight. And of course, go over to YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, Heat Strokes Pod. Subscribe. It's free. But let's get it from the expert himself, Mr. Brady Kannon.
Well, I'm just going to regurgitate that, my friend. I appreciate the outlay of where you can find me. Yeah, the Heat Strokes podcast, a nice episode this week. We've got some great picks from a couple of real experts. John Hasselbauer, people are familiar with him on Twitter at PGA Tout. And then also Jeff Sherman, the odds maker, one of the best golf odds makers truly in the world. He is the golf odds maker at the Westgate Superbook here in Las Vegas. His picks are on our podcast as well, the Heat Strokes podcast. Las Vegas Golfer on Twitter, PGA Tour, golf.com, Sports Grid. I'm all over the place, my friend. And of course, the East Coast Sports Investors podcast every Wednesday.
Stuart Bunting, it's almost beach time. I saw you got your sticker, so Memorial Day will be here in 2 weeks. I'll catch you down at the beach. Brady, go recharge those batteries. You got a big show coming up on the grid. We can't thank you enough here. Enjoy the major. I will not text. I will not jinx us. And we will catch each other back here next Wednesday at 6. Where is next week's tournament?
I tell you what, it's one of my favorites, and this is a nice follow-up to a major. It's certainly not a dud. Now we'll see what kind of field we get, but I really like this classic historical golf course, Colonial Country Club in Fort Worth, Texas. Hogan's Alley, another one of Hogan's Alley. I think there's about 3 courses they call Hogan's Alley. He was that good. But Ben Hogan, I think, was a member here back in the day. This course has hosted U.S. Opens. You probably know Paul Stone, a very popular figure in the betting space here, and not only a great college football handicapper, but an excellent golf handicapper as well. We'll have him on the Heat Strokes podcast to help us break down Colonial. He's from the Texas area, so very well versed on that particular golf tournament, and it'll be a fun one. It's a nice, challenging tournament, but I think it also really has definitive skill sets that work well there. So hopefully we can find another winner this week and next week in Texas.
Brady Kannon, go follow him at Las Vegas Golfer, myself at EC Sports Invest. Again, thank to all the listeners watching. And if you happen to come in late and missed any part of this, go over to our YouTube page at East Coast Sports Investors, download, watch it live. Make sure you get all the outrights, the head-to-heads, and the first-round leaders. And we will catch you same time next week.